One of the biggest and most long-running controversy in my family is over the issue of, believe it or not, drinking soup. Drinking soup over dinner. Because my wife comes from a family that believes that every meal you eat must be accompanied by soup, okay, S-O-U-P. And so you must have soup at every meal. And it's very difficult to make good Chinese soup without MSG. So my wife puts a lot of effort into buying all kinds of ingredients to cook all kinds of soup. But in spite of all her efforts, after so many years, the sad truth is that the children and we have not cultivated a love for soup. Much to my wife's displeasure, we don't love soup like she does. Actually, that's putting it quite mildly. Okay, the only reason we drink soup is out of selfless love and to preserve family harmony. That's the truth. And I regularly tell my helper when she gives me a bowl of soup, I always tell her, next time can you just half the portion, please? And on the days when my wife is not eating dinner with us, we happily forgo the soup. But that doesn't happen so often. So really, we are forced to drink soup all the time. Now, of course, there's soup and there is soup. Okay, there is soup that we tolerate, we just drink it. And then there's a soup that we hate. And the kind of soup we love to hate, especially, is soup cooked with Chinese herbs. Okay, and the ultimate, I tell you this, okay, if you don't come from a traditional family, you'll never understand this. The ultimate is herbal soup that is black in color and bitter in taste. Okay, I don't know why, but traditional Chinese believe that if it tastes awful, it must be healthy. 良药苦口利于病. Remember, you know that? Okay, if it tastes bad, it must be healthy. I remember when I started going to Juliana's house, that was before we got married, to visit, and then her mom would always try to get me to drink black, bitter, herbal soup that looks and tastes like poison. And in those days, confrontation was not an option because I wanted to marry her daughter, right? So I resorted to negotiation, and finally we came to a deal. I agreed that when I reached 40 years old, then I would start drinking black herbal bitter soup. Of course, I had no intention whatsoever of upholding that deal. But thankfully, she forgot about it by the time I reached 40 years old. After we got married and started having children, my mother-in-law still regularly bought herbs, all kinds of herbs, Chinese herbs, to give to us to cook soup. And, of course, she loves us. She did it to love us because these herbs are really not cheap. And so she'll give us this soup. It took me a long time and a lot of effort. I was so happy when I finally persuaded her mom, please don't buy any more herbs for us. And she agreed. I was so happy. So imagine my surprise one day over dinner when I was drinking the soup, I realized, hey, there's herb in the soup. What's happening? So I confronted my helper. I said, how did this herb get into the soup? And she said, actually, Amma passed the herbs to me. And my mother-in-law passed the herbs to me and said, every day must put in the soup. Wow, unbelievable. My mother-in-law had gone around my back to my helper to spike my soup. Okay, don't get me wrong. I really love my mother-in-law. She's a lovely person. She has a good heart. Okay, and really, she loves me very much as well. I also have a good heart too. But this soup example highlights a tension that often exists between parents and children, and usually over much more thorny issues, right? And I'm just so thankful that mine is nothing more serious than drinking black bitter soup. Many of us have issues with our parents and our in-laws that are really far more troubling and difficult to resolve. There are lots of experts, lots of self-help books that teach us how to raise and parent our children, right? But you'll be hard put to find anything that tells us how, when we become adult children, we should relate to our parents, how to constructively relate with our parents when we become adults. And yet that is an important part of our personal maturity, growth, and development as whole and healthy human beings. Many of you here, you have reached the legal age of adults. But you still grapple with having a healthy and happy relationship with your own parents. Now, some of us with parents who are very nice. They're overprotective, they're overproviding. Okay, they still insist on telling us how to live our lives, or want to do for us things that we ought to be doing for ourselves, want to pay for us things that we ought to be paying for ourselves. Some others may be at the opposite end of the spectrum. You had parents, unfortunately, who were neglectful, who were irresponsible, or worse, who were very abusive. And to this day, you continue to feel bitterness and resentment towards them. You know, your upbringing still casts a long shadow over your life. For yet others, things may seem to go well with your parents until you start having your own children. Right? And then this problem rears its ugly head when you have your own children and you find that it's difficult to manage the different views they have about how your children ought to be raised. Whatever the situation, if your parents are still alive, this is relevant for you. And if you happen to be the small minority here, okay, you're very blessed, you have finished your parenting job, your parents whose children have grown up, it would be good for you also, I think, to hear it from the other side so that you can become better parents of adult children and better grandparents as well. Okay, and this is useful for all those families where adult children continue to live under the one roof with their parents, and that's a large number of you. And I just want to say that whatever I want to share today will be applicable to you whether you're Christian or you're not a Christian. Okay, or you're not even sure what you are, where you are on this matter. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's all right because these truths I'm going to share are universal in application and helpful to everyone who applies them. Yet, at the same time, we all know from personal experience that even when we know the right thing to do, even when we've learned what the right thing to do is, a lot of times our problem is not with the knowledge, knowing what to do. Our problem is that even when we know it, we don't have the willpower, we don't have the strength to do the right thing. We can't get ourselves to do it. And this is where Christianity comes in. This is one of the reasons why I'm so glad I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, because He gives us the power to do the right thing. Christianity does not just tell you what the right thing is, it gives you the power to do the right thing. So, for all those of you who are not yet believers, as you listen to this, I also hope that you consider how trusting in Jesus Christ, will give you the best, the strength to do what needs to be done, and in this context, the best chance to build a happy family for yourself. Now we're going to go to today's scripture, which is found in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, very familiar passage, which says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment, with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth." Based on this passage today, I just want to share with you three key concepts represented by three key words that would help us become healthy adult children. And the first key word is the word honor. Tell the person next to you, honor. When the Bible tells children to obey their parents, it actually means it's actually talking to young children. This refers to young children. Children who have not yet reached adulthood. And they have a biblical command to obey their parents. Now, the Bible gives us one and only one fascinating account into Jesus' childhood. And it tells us that when he was 12, he went with his family to Jerusalem during a Jewish festival. Okay, they do that 3 times a year, but on this occasion, they'd gone up to the festival, they'd gone to the temple. When it was time to leave, to go home, Jesus did not follow his parents home. And the parents did not realize that he was no longer with them. They just started on the journey home. I mean, you're thinking, how could that even have happened? But they probably traveled in a big extended family group. And sometimes we also lose our children in the shopping center, right? And they didn't realize it, and they traveled a whole day's journey away from Jerusalem. And they say, "Where's our son? Where's Jesus?" Okay, and they started searching frantically everywhere for him. It took them 3 whole days to find him. They must have been panicking for 3 whole days. And finally, they went back to Jerusalem and they found him in the temple courts having a Bible study session with the religious teachers, although he was probably teaching them more than they were teaching him. By this time, his parents were understandably very flustered and upset, and they told Jesus off. How could you treat us like this? It's so interesting to read Jesus' response to his parents in Luke chapter 2, verse 49. It says, he said, why? Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house? Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house? Okay? But they did not understand what I was saying to them. Nobody would have understood them. No Jew would refer to God as his Father at that point in time. Verse 51 then says, then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient. Okay, obedient to them. You can underline that. Now, Jesus was not only their son, he was also the Son of God. That's why he could say, this is my Father's house. You know that? But as a human child, he was fully God, he was fully man. And as a human child, Jesus followed God's rules for human beings fully, including obeying his parents. Okay, I say all this because some of you are still teenagers. Okay, it's very likely that you think you know far more than your parents. Okay, every teenager thinks like that. Okay, you know far more than your parents. Okay, only when you become adult, then you realize, oh, my parents learned so much in the last few years. Right? You think you know more than your parents, and in some ways you actually do. But you still have a duty to obey your parents until you actually become adults. Because even Jesus, who knew everything, even Jesus did that. As we transition from childhood into adulthood, we no longer have a duty to obey our parents. However, this passage tells us we have a lifelong duty to honor our parents. And you know, it's so sad when you think about this, but it is true that so many of our parents, non-believing parents, still labor under the misconception that if my child becomes a Christian, I'm going to lose him. Okay, you'll no longer be as filial. I'll lose him to the church, and he'll no longer care about us. Nothing is further from the truth, guys. And you've got to help your parents understand this. Okay, in the passage you read, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, Paul is quoting directly from the 10 Commandments found in the Old Testament. And the 10 Commandments, we know, it's a summary quote. Okay? In just 10 rules, God communicated the essence of all morality that governs all of life for all time. And right smack in the middle of that is the command to honor your parents. And Paul points out that this is the command. This is the one out of 10 commands, the only one that includes a promise, an incentive, okay, of a great blessing, long life, and well-being. And it's obvious, okay, we can argue over whether the promise still operates today for us, but it's obvious that God clearly wanted to drive home this unique command. Okay, all the commands in 10 Commandments, this one is unique. That it is a special place in God's heart that we honor our parents, whether we are young children or we are adults. Another way the Bible conveys the seriousness of this command is through powerful, poetic imagery. If we go to Proverbs, for example, Proverbs chapter 30, verse 17, okay, there are many passages like this. It says, the eye that mocks a father or scorns an aged mother will be, okay, this is, should be censored, violent, very violent, will be pecked out by the ravens of the valley and eaten. The eyes should be eaten by vultures. I tell you, if you ever read Confucius, okay, who has so much to say about filial piety, nowhere did he ever come close to saying something so strong about honoring your parents. Of course, the Bible is not saying that this is going to happen literally, otherwise most of you here should be blind already. But it is telling us what God feels of children who do not treat their parents, who do not honor their parents, who treat their parents with disrespect. And as you can see, it's not a pretty picture at all. We simply won't find anything in any other philosophy, any culture, any religion that rivals this, that puts such a high premium on the duty to honor your parents. What does it mean to honor your parents? What does it mean to honor anybody? I think to honor somebody is to, in simple terms, treat the person like a VIP, a very important person, to extend special treatment to the person, to consider the person more important than yourself, to confer greater respect, blessing, and status than you would do for other people generally. And at the most basic level, I think it means you provide for your parents' needs. I'm talking about financial needs. And it is so important that Jesus himself addressed this specifically. In Matthew chapter 15, verse 4, Jesus said this, "For God said," that sounds familiar, "honor your father and mother," he's quoting from 10 Commandments, "and anyone who curses their father or mother is to put to death." Again, other passages in the Old Testament. Verse 5, Jesus' application, "But you say that if anyone declares that what might have been used to help their father or mother is devoted to God," okay, the money that I have has been set aside, dedicated to God, they are not to honor their father or mother with it, so no, it's too bad I can't give it to my parents. "Thus you nullify the word of God for the sake of your tradition, you hypocrites." What a stinging rebuke. We always think that, wow, Jesus is that nice guy, very gentle. He never scold anybody. Far from it. Okay? I mean, he's supremely compassionate and gracious and merciful. But when he wants to scold people, he doesn't mince his words. Right? So here Jesus is giving a stinging rebuke to people who used their religion, God, okay, as an excuse for not supporting their parents financially. So as you can see, he quoted from everything that we already said about honoring father and mother in the Bible. Now this is interesting because some time ago, my colleague, in the church office, one colleague in church told me that one day she received a text message from her mother. It was a very diplomatic message. It said, "Dear daughter," of course all this in Chinese are New Year, "Dear daughter, are you struggling with some serious financial problem? I'm only asking because in the last 6 months, you have not given me any spending money, like you always do." And my colleague was horrified, and she realized what had happened because she had set up a standing order with a bank account to transfer money to her mother directly, monthly. But she had changed her bank account. And when she changed her bank account, she forgot about issuing a new standing order. And the poor mother, okay, had waited anxiously and patiently for 6 months, but felt too awkward to broach the subject because, it's a sensitive issue talking about money. So guys, don't do this to your parents. Give to your parents and don't make it difficult for them. Some of you here, you are, very blessed. You don't need, your parents who don't need your financial support, at least for now. Okay, but I just want to say this to you guys, that in our culture, we still use the gift of money to convey our love and to bless other people. Okay, it's not crude, it's not mercenary. It's just Chinese culture, thousands of years. And that's why children give that's why parents give their children ang paos at Chinese New Year, right? Not that the children need it. It's a way to bless them, convey love and a blessing. So can I just say to you, even if your parents don't need the money now, it would be a very good idea to give to them. Give something to them. Give something to them regularly, and I would say give to them generously out of your means. Okay, I think that's baseline, right? Apart from that, always talk to your parents with respect. Okay, I know sometimes, I notice especially daughters and mothers, they can have a lot of conflicts and get very impatient with each other. But talk to your mother, talk to your parents respectfully. Always treat them with dignity. And use special occasions. Remember them and bless them. Okay, those are just the basics. You can do a lot more. Okay, whatever, depending on what your situation is. For many years, my wife expressed to me the desire that we take our parents on a holiday without our children to honor them. I mean, we every now and then we will bring them with us on our family holiday with our children. But my wife said, can we just take them on a special trip without the children before they are too old to travel? Okay, in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking that I know that if I do that, my wife will say again, I don't know how long more we have to live. Let's do it another time. But This year, I decided to grant my wife her heart's desire. Okay? So I arranged a trip to Japan in May just for the four of us. Okay, now I don't know if it's such a good idea. Well, I don't know by May whether it will still even be possible to travel to Japan with the situation, the virus situation developing very rapidly there. But sincerely in my heart, I hope that this will materialize, that it will happen, because I really cherish the opportunity to honor our parents in a special way. Because not only does it please the heart of God when we do that, it also, and God will reward such behavior. But it also, I've learned that it brings me deep personal satisfaction. My own parents passed away many years ago, and I'm just so thankful that I still have my wife's parents to honor. Okay, that here is an opportunity for me to do something that pleases God's heart. Tell the person next to you, honor your father and mother. The second keyword, for today is the word distinguish. Okay, distinguish. And what I mean by that is that you need to separate yourself from your parents. Okay, in fact, psychologists have a technical term for this process that ought to happen in every child's life. It is called individuation. Individuation. The natural, healthy process of the child becoming increasingly separate from the parent by developing his or her own personality, interests, and life apart from the parent. When children reach early adulthood, parents need to step down from their position as guardians and look upon their, be able to look their children in the eye as equals. And children must also be able to transit to seeing their parents as equals and as friends. They are still children, right? But they need to be adult children in their own rights. Many of us experience conflicts with our parents during our teenage years. But teenage rebellion is a very common term, but a lot of times, teenage rebellion is simply a child's attempt to find himself, to distinguish himself as a separate individual from his parents. Talking back, breaking rules, disagreeing, refusing to spend time with the family. These are all ways of saying and feeling, I'm me, and I make my own decisions. Okay, and if you have teenage children, I think you need to be enlightened about this, and not take it so personally, and work with your child and help them through this process. Now, you might have watched the Netflix series Designated Survivor. Okay, I think many of you have watched that. Okay, if you've not watched it, I will say it's a good series, at least until the end of season 2. Don't bother to watch season 3. If you have not watched it, there was a scene in the finale in season 2 that really touched my heart very deeply. Okay, it's just stuck in my mind. Okay, that scene. If you not watch it, it doesn't matter. Okay, I just explain to you very quickly. The show is about the U.S. president, a guy by the name of Tom Kirkman. He has a son whose name is Leo Kirkman. The son came of age, and he applied to 2 universities, Georgetown and Stanford universities, and he got admitted to both universities. Now, for just some context, Georgetown University is on the East Coast in Washington, D.C., and of course, that's where his father lives in the White House. Stanford University is far, far away on the West Coast in Silicon Valley, California. Okay? And Leo, he got admitted to both, but he only went to tell the father that he applied to Georgetown and he got into Georgetown. He didn't talk about getting into Stanford as well. But the father found about it because, he's the president, and Stanford University had privately informed him about his son's application. So there's this scene in which President Kirkman asked his son Leo, why didn't he mention applying to Stanford and getting in? And Leo explained that, it was a no-brainer. Okay, no need to talk about it because his mom, that is President Kirkman's wife, had died not so long ago. And Leo said that, I want to stay close. I want to be here for you and his sister. Okay, since mom has just passed away recently. And then Leo asked his father, isn't that a good thing? And to his surprise, Kirkman said, no, I don't understand. And his father said, no, the words, I put it on the screen for you to see. He says, you will when you have your own children. All you want for them is for their dreams to come true. This is what I want for you. This is what your mother would have wanted for you. That was so beautiful. Really, it made me cry. It just stuck in my mind all this while. Because parents are meant to work themselves out of a job. Their role is to launch you, not to limit you, to set you free, not to hold you back. Of course, we can't ignore the fact that culture has a big part to play in all these things. Right? In the West, I think it's far easier to say this. Okay, because in the West, there is a much greater emphasis on discovering and expressing yourself, your individuality. There are a lot, therefore, better at individuation, but I think it's fair to say not as strong on honoring parents. In our culture, family is expected to come first. Very often, family is everything. We are big on honoring our parents, but because of that, very often we compromise our individuation process. Instead of cutting the apron strings, we simply extend them longer. And we go on living by our parents' approval. We go on making decisions based on their pleasure or displeasure. Or we remain on them, dependent on them financially or emotionally. And as a result, we fail to distinguish ourselves fully from our parents. How does this work? Okay, case study. A man came home and found his wife in tears. What happened? What happened was that the man's father had called her and said over the phone very harshly, I can't believe you forgot my wife's birthday. What kind of a daughter-in-law are you? Whoa. Very, very difficult situation. Question. What do you think that man should do in a situation like this? Guys, what would you have done in a situation like this? Well, I'll tell you what the man did. That man called his mother up immediately, apologized profusely to her for forgetting her birthday, and promised that he would do something to make up for it. And then he said, please put Dad on the phone. And the father came to the phone, said, Dad, I need to say this to you, and I hope that this will be the only time I need to say this to you. If you have a problem with something I have done or failed to do, don't take it out on my wife. Talk to me, not her. I wonder how many husbands would have stepped up as courageously to tell his father that he had overstepped the boundaries. But that would be the right thing to do. Okay, in our culture, very difficult to do something like that. But that's the right thing to do. We need to distinguish ourselves from our parents. Okay, we need to treat them as equals. I mean, if a friend did that to you, a friend called your wife and scolded her, I think you call up and give him peace of your mind, right? And if your friend can't do that, neither should your father be allowed to do that. Because now we are all adults in our own right. Now, things often become complicated. If your parents are the primary caregivers of your children as well, okay, and they insist on doing child raising their way rather than your way. Okay, this is a very common situation. And may I just humbly suggest to you that if you cannot resolve such a situation, if you're stuck in such a situation, you cannot resolve that with your parents. Whenever they're not home, they let the children sit in front of the TV, give an iPad to the children, and you just can't get the stuff out there. They intervene when you try to discipline the child. If you cannot resolve these things with your parents, you should seriously consider an alternative childcare arrangement. Okay, you may think, well, it's easy for you to say, Pastor, eh? Well, the truth is that many people don't have this option and they have to find another way to do it, right? You will if you need to. And I'll suggest to you that in a situation like that, you need to do that. You cannot have a healthy relationship with your parents so long as they still think that they have a right to control you or override your decisions. Then you have not distinguished yourself from them. One other way, some of us allow our parents to continue to exert control over us is very subtle. Okay, it happens like this. Sometimes you hear people say something like this: I'm never going to go to church. Because when I was a kid, my father forced me to go to church. I hated it, so I'm never going to church. That looks like individuation has occurred. You are now your own man. But are you? Really? No, of course you're not. You are not yet free to be able to objectively assess for yourself whether going to church is a good thing in itself, whether there are good reasons to do it or not good reasons not to do it. No. Okay, you are still living under your father's shadow. Okay, he is really still in control of your life. And the irony is that he may not even be alive anymore, but his ghost is still running your life. Okay, and many of us allow our parents to do that because of the things we hate about the way they raise us, so we just react against that and do the opposite. You have not distinguished yourself from them in that case. Now, for those of you who are followers of Jesus Christ, this issue also raises some serious questions about whether your emotional attachment to your parents or your desire, your need for their approval is stopping you, hindering you from obeying God, what God is calling you to do. I mean, we have a familiar passage in the Bible. Okay, you find it in Matthew chapter 4, verse 21. It says, going on from there, Jesus saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets, family business, fishing. Jesus called to them, and immediately they left their boat and their father and followed Jesus. Look, these guys, they were part of the family business. What is the father going to do without their help? Isn't Jesus getting them to dishonor their parents? The answer is no. Because each one of us must decide for ourselves, between God and ourselves, what God is calling us to do, regardless of what our parents think and how our parents feel. We ought to be able to respond like these guys. We may think that, wow, this is so extreme. Okay, my point is not that everybody, should follow Jesus, full time. But every one of us must be in a position to make decisions regardless of what our parents want and how our parents feel. Okay, hold this intention, the first point I made, that we need to honor our parents. We should consider their views. And truth be told, they still have a lot of wisdom to share with us because they've been through a lot more than we have. We should humbly consider their opinions and their views, but we must not make decisions based on that or desire to please them. Whether it's to become a follower of Jesus Christ, whether it's to get baptized, whether it's to go to church, whether it's to give to the hard-earned money to church, whether it's to spend time serving in church, how much time we spend serving in church, whether it's to marry only a believer, to go into full-time Christian ministry or even a missions field. All these are things you need to decide for yourself between you and God as an adult, free from emotional entanglement to your parents or fear of their disapproval. And truth be told, I think if you examine your heart, many of us, we are not there yet. We have not fully distinguished ourselves from our parents. Okay, whether you are Christian or not a Christian, it is important that you do that. It is important that you honor your parents while yet at the same time distinguishing yourself from them to be a healthy, functioning individual in your own right. Third lesson, the third keyword is the word forgive. Tell the person next to you, forgive. The Bible has a lot to say about forgiveness. Okay, if you read it, you may think that this is disproportionate. Okay, out of the many commands the Bible gives us, the command to forgive is given a central position. Because in a way that we cannot fully understand, okay, there's some mystery in this. Forgiveness goes to the heart of the Christian faith. Jesus puts it in very stark terms. It makes us comfortable, the way that he puts it. Basically, Jesus says this, look, if there's somebody you cannot forgive in your heart, okay, there's somebody you're still angry with, harboring resentment against, refuse to release, wishing bad things to happen to him, don't want to relate to him, Jesus says that, look, if there's something like that in your heart, you're not really a Christian. You're not really a follower, my follower, because you have not yet experienced, grasped, and understood and internalized the forgiveness that God has extended to you through Jesus Christ. Okay? That's how high the bar Jesus says. If you are still harboring unforgiveness, you're not Christian. Not only that, forgiveness and unforgiveness, okay, quite apart from that, forgiveness and unforgiveness, whether you look at it from biblical point of view, from what science tells us, they have powerful effects on you in every way, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. If you are not willing to forgive, it will not go well with you. Okay? It's as basic as that. And that's why the Bible says in Colossians chapter 3, verse 13, forgive, bear with each other, and forgive one another. If any of you have a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. Forgiving, the Bible doesn't specifically tell us to forgive your parents. But forgiving our parents is crucial, especially crucial because if you don't forgive your parents, not only will all the terrible and negative and destructive effects of, you suffer the negative effects of unforgiveness in your own life, it will also shape the way you raise your own children. You parent your own children. Okay, and this pattern is repeated over and over again. A woman is rejected by her own mother, goes on to reject her own daughter. A man who has been abandoned by his father ends up leaving his own children. The vicious cycle tends to repeat itself and is passed down from generation to generation. Forgiving your parents allows you to break that curse and to pass on the redemptive effects to future generations. And let's face the fact, guys, all parents are imperfect. Our parents are imperfect, and we ourselves, when we become parents, we also become imperfect parents. We all make mistakes. The mistakes that parents make will have negative effects on the children. They're sometimes serious, sometimes not so serious, but they will impact the children. I can only share from my own life. My own parents were very conservative, responsible, good people. There's no doubt whatsoever in my mind that they loved me. But by the time they had me, I think they were suffering from children fatigue. Because I was the 8th child, the youngest of 8 children. So apart from meeting my basic physical needs, got food to eat, clothes to wear, a roof over your head, they essentially left me to fend for myself in every other way. And way before I was able and ready to do so. Okay? Of course, as a child, I didn't realize that. But I look back, it's quite horrifying, all the things that they allowed to happen to me. My first day in primary school was really traumatic. Okay, I still suffer from it to this day. My mother took me to the school gate. And it was locked because we were late. And she said, it's all right, you're very small. There's a gap under the gate. You just go under. So I rolled under the gate. She passed the bag over to me over the gate. And I walked in, and guess what everybody was doing? Standing at attention, singing the national anthem. And I was absolutely lost. I just wandered among the ranks of people feeling so shameful, so bewildered, and so lost. I remember it as vividly today as the day it happened. My first day in secondary school was no better. In fact, my parents didn't even realize I was going to secondary school. Really? And I had a primary school friend who stayed near me. We were going to the same school. So his father said, okay, first day I fetch both of you all to school. So he dropped us off at school. And when I stepped into the school, I really wanted to run away. To my horror, I realized that without exception, everybody was in white uniform. But I stuck out like a fool in my green primary school uniform. Can you imagine how I felt? Everybody had bought the required textbooks and stationery except for me. That was the longest school day of my life. At the end of the day, my teacher came up to me and said that, can you go and buy a new uniform? And then when school ended, I had to ask the other students how to get to the bus stop and what bus do I take to go home, which was a long way off. I finally reached home. I told my mother what happened, and only then, that night, did she bring me to buy a new school uniform. It's just amazing, the things that happen. When I grew up, I realized that not once in my life did my parents show me any physical affection. Okay, never once in their life did they touch me in any way. And I can't remember any one single time when they praised me or complimented me in any way at all. And to me, this is so ironic because every year I came home with results that other parents would die for. But my parents, strong silent types, would sign my report book without ever saying anything. My parents did not celebrate any of our birthdays. And you may find this really hard to believe. Growing up, I passed through most of my birthdays without even realizing it. It was a non-event in our family. Until I went to youth fellowship, I was 14 years old. First time anybody ever bought a birthday cake, sent a birthday song for me. Okay, you can understand why I love the church so much. I didn't understand it back then. But I had grown up with a big hole in my heart. I got lots of affirmation from my personal achievements outside and from my friends, right, who looked up to me. But deep down inside, I was very unhappy. Because what I really wanted, what I really needed was my parents' approval and affection. And I got none of that. I think I should have turned out very badly, actually. What saved me, when I look back, is so obvious. What saved me was that at the age of 13 years old, I put my trust in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And among other things, He began to fill up that hole in my heart. Even today, I would say that there's still lingering effects of all that has happened to me, but God is still at work in my life. The process is not complete yet. But I also know that because of Jesus Christ, I've changed the trajectory of my life, and not only that, the trajectory of my own family as I raised them. I've lost count of the number of people who share with me, even strangers who talk to me and share with me that in their family, every married person was divorced. The parents were divorced, their siblings were divorced, their uncles and aunties are divorced, and they tell me that they expect to be divorced as well. And I think that's a pretty accurate forecast. It is going to happen, likely going to happen, unless God comes into your family. My point is that we all grow up with certain deficits because of our parents' mistakes, despite all their good intentions and efforts. And, in the bigger scheme of things, my problems are really small. Okay, what I've experienced, they're really small compared to many of you whom I know have experienced far, far worse parenting than I have. And some of you are filled with resentment, deep resentment over your parents' failures. Some of you have a lot of struggles in your life and you don't even realize that actually they're contributed to by your upbringing, the way your parent raised you. Whatever situation you are in, you need to do two things. Number one, you need to forgive your parents for what they failed to do or what they did wrong. And number two, you need to receive God's love into your life, into your heart, to make up for what your parents failed to give you. Because I know so many adult students who still feel so bitter and still complaining and whining about how bad a job their parents did. They still want to have what they did not have when they were children. That's not going to happen. Your parents may not even be alive anymore. But God's love can make up and fill that hole in your heart and give you what your parents failed to give you. You need to forgive your parents, and you need God's love in your heart. In fact, it is only by having the second thing that you can do the first, really, when you experience the love of God. Then you'll find the resources, you'll find the capacity and the power to forgive your parents. Finally, this message will not be complete without me urging those of you who are Christ followers to make every effort to reach your parents for Jesus Christ if you have not yet already done so. Because, guys, you have simply no idea the difference that you make to the way you feel when one day your parents are not around anymore. My father's last few years were filled with lots of health problems. Okay, he spent most of his days on an oxygen machine, actually. And he believed that he was dying, that he may go anytime. And he dreaded the idea that when he died, the whole family would not be around him by his deathbed. Because of that, he tried. Okay, my brothers and sisters have all married and moved out, so most of the time I'm the only one of them. He tried very hard to control my movements, my activities. He would make it very difficult for me every time I wanted to leave the house. He would nag me to stay at home, and he'd tell me I may die, when you go out. And we had countless quarrels over it. I really hated it, okay, because, I'll leave the house feeling so angry on one hand and feeling so guilty on the other hand. I'm abandoning my father with his fears. In my third year in university, my friend asked me to go with him to America because he goes there. He went there to work regularly. And he said, look, you only need to buy an air ticket. I'll take care of everything else. And I was really excited because at 23 years old, I had never flown on a plane. Okay, it's hard to believe, right? So I went to tell my father about it, and not surprisingly, he got terribly upset with me. What if I die when you're overseas? And I told him, no, it's not going to happen. So many years, last few years, every time you keep saying you're going to die, you're still around. So I insisted on going, and I bought the air ticket. It was an early morning flight. So I went to this room that morning to say goodbye to him. He was awake, but he didn't respond to me. Oh, well. So I went to the airport. I checked in with luggage with my friend, and then he said he needed to make a phone call. And believe it, it's hard for you to imagine in those days, he go to the public phone to make a phone call. Okay, he stood at the public phone. He talked for a long time doing his business. And then he started paging me over the PA system in Changi Airport. Okay, they used to do that. You call your name and say, please go to the boarding gate. They called my name and say, please go to the boarding gate immediately. Okay, it didn't occur to me, why my name? Why me only? No, they didn't call my friend's name. So finally, he finished making his phone calls. We rushed to the boarding gate. And a man came up to me and said, are you Mr. Wang? I said, yes. Is there a problem? He says, I'm afraid your family called and said their father has just passed away. You need to offload your luggage and go home now. And so I went down to the tarmac. Okay, they unloaded all the luggage, held up the whole flight. And in a daze, I picked up my luggage and went home to bury my father. For many years after that, the truth is, I really struggled with the incident. Okay, I agonized greatly over it. I felt crushed by guilt. It's irrational, but in my mind, there's a voice that keeps telling me, you killed your father. I kept thinking that I killed my father for insisting on going when he didn't want me to. And I beat myself up constantly for being such a lousy son, for not being there for him at the end just as he wanted me to. But very strange, because at the same time, another part of me was filled with great anger. I had recurrent dreams of the quarrels we had over him telling me, don't go out, I'm going to die, you stay at home. And many nights I woke up, my heart was racing, my fist was clenched, because it felt so real, the dreams felt so real. But I was going through this for quite a number of years, and one day, God impressed on my heart that I ought to stop looking back and look to the future. And he asked me, when you look to the future, what do you see? And I realized that I was going to be reunited with my father in heaven, and God gave me a mental picture of us, two of us, bantering and joking about our silly quarrels, how stupid we used to be, and laughing about how he was right and I was wrong on that fateful morning. I had to admit and say, I got that one wrong when I went off against his wishes. But there was not going to be any anger, no resentment, no bitterness, no fear. And we just have a good laugh over it, all that has happened. And the joy of knowing that all is forgiven, all is good, and that above all, God is good. And somehow after that event, that guilt was completely lifted off me. I never struggled with it again. I no longer had those dreams. Okay, some of you, you're very well read, you may argue, just going through the Kluber-Ross grieving process, whatever. But deep down in my heart, I know that God had healed me. And that's why, guys, I'm so thankful that several years before my father passed away, I decided I really need to share, make the effort to share the love of Christ with him. I grew up with my parents really objecting to me becoming a Christian, but I felt convicted that I need to change their hearts, help them change their hearts. It took a long while, and I had to try many different ways to get through to him. But one day, cut long story short, he stood up with me. I brought him to church. I brought him up for quite a number of weeks, and one day he stood up to give his life to the Lord Jesus Christ. By God's grace, my wife and I, we also had the joy and the tremendous privilege of being able to lead both her parents to Christ. And to this day, my in-laws, I'm reminded of this every time I visit them, because to this day, my in-laws still proudly display a plaque that I bought for them when that happened that says, 耶稣是我家之主. Jesus is the Lord of this house. They display it proudly in the living room. That's the very best thing that you can do for your unbelieving parents. Can we worship team up here, please? And if you have not done that, brothers and sisters, don't let another day go by. Forgive your parents. And then point them to the forgiveness of Jesus Christ. There is really nothing better you can do to honor your parents. That some of us, our parents have passed away without becoming believers. There are some of us here, our parents may pass away without becoming believers. Don't blame God for that. God respects our individuality. At the end of the day, everyone has to make their own decision. And God honors our freedom to choose. God honors your parents' freedom to choose. But whatever your parents' decision, I think you'll be a lot more at peace with yourself if you know that you've done whatever you could to share the love of Christ with them. Okay, I really encourage you to do that. I want to pray for all of you whose parents are still not believers. I want to pray for all of you who grew up with parents who were neglectful, who were abusive, irresponsible. And I know many of you were in the unfortunate position. So can I just invite everybody to stand? While we close this time in prayer.